Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Lie, 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 ya lie, 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 ya lie, 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 ya lie, 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 ya lie, 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 ya lie, 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 please join me. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. La 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 la. Ya la 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 la. La 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Lie, 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 ya lie, 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 ya lie, 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 ya lie, 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 ya lie, 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 ya lie, 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 ya lie, 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 lie.
Are you ready for the big chill? I have been yearning for seasonable weather, or seasonally appropriate weather, and it appears my wishes are going to be fulfilled. So dig out your boots and your gloves. Shabbat comes along once a week. There are some weeks that are more difficult to get through than others. This past week, between what has been going on out in California, which I guess that was even a little bit before this week, but as those of you know, our former cantor, Ruth Berman Harris, the synagogue she worked at in Pasadena burned down to the ground. Very, very terrible. And destruction of absolutely indescribable magnitude. And a lot of lives turned upside down. And while the media likes to concentrate on those whose net worth is phenomenal, the truth of the matter is some of the neighborhoods that burned were very middle class. And it's the whole thing is a bit of a mess. The good news is there is, at least the last time I checked this afternoon, a ceasefire that looks like it might be able to go into effect, which is not certainly the end of the story, but it's a good next chapter. And my hope and prayer is that will come to be in just a couple of days. We are going to try to put all that aside for a moment and reacquaint ourselves with the values and messages and teachings of our tradition, to refuel ourselves, not simply physically or even spiritually, but in an ethical sense, to remind ourselves the way things ought to be, even on the days that they're not that way. We're going to continue with the lighting of Shabbat candles on page 120. And Rhonda, would you be so kind? I don't mean to ask the person who's the furthest from the edge, from the row, but if you would please light for us, and we can join together in the blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu b'hed l'chner Shabbat.
We're going to continue with the singing of Shalom Aleichem, a traditional song to welcome the Sabbath on page 142.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharetz, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu Ni L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
And on page 138, we continue with the 16th century poem welcoming Shabbat Lecha Dodi. And as we customarily do, we will sing the first, second, fifth, and ninth stanza. And the ninth stanza, which refers to the entrance of Shabbat, will rise and face the door to symbolically welcome its presence.
Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Yishmianu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad, u'shemo echad, l'shemo tiferet v'litila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki mekor habracha, merosh mikedem mesucha. סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 5. Hitoreri, Kiva orech kumi ori, uri shir daberi, kevod Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam besimcha uvtzola, toch emunei am segula. Boi chala kala lecha dodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabela lecha dodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabela.
We continue on page 144 with the Reader's Kaddish, which the cantor will use to lead us from these introductory sections of the service into its main body.
Yikadal v'kadash shemei Rabba.
Amen.
V'yamad v'rachluteh v'yamlich malchuteh v'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol b'heit Yisrael bagala bagala uvizman kariv v'himeru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach le'olam u'l'almei almaya yitbarach yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitrom amid naseh v'yitadar v'yitale v'yithalal shemei dekudesha b'richu le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata ta'miran b'yahama v'yimeru. Amen.
Page 146.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach hamevorach le'olam
We continue with the prayer thanking God for the wonder of nature on page 148, and please join me in the middle. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzevaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on the evening. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravim. Page 150.
Ahavat olam beit Yisrael, amecha ahavta, amecha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta, Alekein Adonai Eloheinu אהבתך לעולם ועד, כי הם חיינו לאורך ימינו, ובהם נגה יומם ולילה, נגה יומם ולילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל, אוהב עמו ישראל. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed.
Please be seated. And let's join together on 154 with the V'ahavta.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Please join me at the top of 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. Page 158.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורת אילות אוסף אלה, נורת אילות אוסף אלה, מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים, זה עניינו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי יפאר אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
On page 160, please join me. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and raise us up, our guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help.
Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. God, our going and coming, to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, haporez sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim.
Page 162.
V'shameru fenei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, ביני ובין בני ישראל, עוד היא לעולם, עוד היא לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
On page 164, we've reached the central portion of the liturgy this evening, the Tefillah, also known as the Amidah, which means standing, and we say it standing, so please rise.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi ki tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, v'Konei Hakol, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר, מושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה, אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם, אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומיתו מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים לכל יום יהללוך סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
Please be seated. And let's continue on the top of page 173, and we'll continue on the top of the odd-numbered pages till we arrive at 178, Shalom Rav, our prayer for peace. Please join me. May these hours
Of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayers, wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands. You are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence.
Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha b'yirah na'avod.
God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words,
for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'eh lehodot. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. V'tov beinecha levarech et amecha Yisrael. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Tasim.
Baruch atah Adonai hamivarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. Blessed are you, Adonai, you bless your people Israel, and God willing, all people everywhere with peace. We continue our prayers silently.
Yihul ratzon imrei fi. Yihul ratzon imrei fi. Vegion libi lefanecha. Adonai tzuri vegoali. Oh, may the words of my mouth, the meditations of my heart be acceptable before you, O God, my rock and my redeemer. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru,
As we customarily do, we're going to say a Mesher Berach for healing for our friends and loved ones who could use such a prayer. A modern setting for the tradition's ancient words can be found on page 371 of the Siddur. We think especially of the hostages, all those who have been wounded in battles across the world. Amy Teuber, Ann Platt, Bill Ross, Bob Ratke, Bracha Bat Miriam, David Goldenholtz, Dieter Tischberg, Donald Metzke, Dorothy Price, Emily Baer, Fiona Powell, Gary Siegel, Genevieve Vermeulen, Herb Selden, Jennifer Gates, Jennifer Houston, Jim McDermott, Karen McDermott, Kathy Manchero, Katie Peltz Davis, Kevin Boland, Corey Konopka, Lawrence Evans, Lee Maxon, Leonore Friedman, Lucy Adams, Mark Eisman, Marcia Capolo, Marianne Gehrig, Marianne Resnick, Martha Michael Ross, Michael Stillman, Michelle Delao, Michelle Jacoby, Mosima Ramirez, Pat Kester, Rivka Fegi Bat Phyllis, Rory Langlois, Rosie Resnick, Roz Flagel, and Sally Ross. If there are others of whom you're aware who could use our prayers for healing, I would ask you to hold them close to you in your heart as together we pray.
Mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Sheperach imotenu, mekor habracha lavodenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
let me set the scene. A change in administration approaches. Some consider the outgoing ruler to be a has-been elitist, not one of us, not one of the people, and question his competence and his patriotism. The incoming leader, in contrast, is a native and is fiercely loyal to his homeland above all. Once in power, the new leader makes a list of his political enemies, chief among them his predecessors' allies. He then methodically makes life difficult for them, even to the point where they think about leaving the country. While this description sounds like it could have been ripped from today's headlines, it actually comes directly from the beginning of this week's Torah portion. Shemot, it's the first portion in the book of Exodus. And it begins, Shemot actually means names. It begins by listing the names of all the Israelites who had come down to Egypt with Jacob, his sons, and their families. And then it says, Vayakom melech hadash al Mitzrayim asher lo yada et Yosef. And then arose a new king over Egypt who knew not Joseph. The new king was an Egyptian native, and his ascension to the throne ended several decades of rulers who went by the name Hyksos and who were from elsewhere outside of Egypt. It's possible that one of the reasons Joseph got along so well with the Pharaoh in his day was that both of them were outsiders. Both of them were not native Egyptian and so had a lot in common. Once in power, the new Pharaoh makes a list of those who are allied with the Hyksos and sets out to make life miserable. So you see, it isn't that a new king arose over Egypt who knew not Joseph. In fact, he knew exactly who Joseph was and the role Joseph had played in saving Egypt, but for the old regime. And that's why, after nearly 400 years of relative calm, life became increasingly difficult for the Hebrews. It's remarkable when Torah portions, ones we've read time and again, make a reappearance at a most propitious time, when the zeitgeist makes us look at the Torah in somewhat of a new way. Indeed, such coincidences also give us new insight as we interpret current events through the prism of Judaism's master narrative. In truth, though, we don't always need to turn to the ancient past, despite its continued relevance. In his 2004 book, The Plot Against America, Philip Roth foresaw much of what we are living through right now. The book is a counterfactual history that describes how, through a fluke of the 1940 brokered Republican convention, Charles Lindbergh, the aviator, was nominated and won the presidency. Lindbergh then nominated noted anti-Semite Henry Ford to be Secretary of State. He made treaties with Germany and other Axis nations. He began to fulfill every nightmare the Jewish community had. Roth points out the necessary preconditions to elect a despot. The first is underestimation. Despite his celebrity, Lindbergh was really seen to be a lightweight. President Franklin Roosevelt greets the news of Lindbergh's nomination by Republicans with a great deal of confidence. Roth writes, Roosevelt raised everyone's spirits by his robust response on learning that his opponent was to be Lindbergh rather than a senator of the stature of Taft, or a prosecutor as aggressive as Dewey, or a big-time lawyer as smooth and handsome as Wilkie. When awakened at 4 a.m. to be told the news, he was said to have predicted from his White House bed, by the time this is over, that young man will be sorry not only that he entered politics, but that he ever learned to fly. The second precondition is overestimation. An overestimation, in this case by the political establishment, of its own mastery of the borders and limits of permissible rhetoric. Our 47th president-to-be continues to scapegoat immigrants, Muslims, and liberals on his return to the White House, proving that the past really is prologue. Now, to the book, in an infamous speech in Des Moines, Iowa, Lindbergh scapegoats, quote, the Jewish people, or alternatively, the Jewish race, as one of, quote, the most important groups who have been pressing this country toward war in Europe. The other groups being the British government and the Roosevelt administration itself. The next day, writes Roth, the very accusations that had elicited roars of approval from Lindbergh's Iowa audience were vigorously denounced by liberal journalists, by Roosevelt's press secretary, by Jewish agencies and organizations, even from within the Republican Party, by New York's District Attorney Dewey and Wall Street utilities lawyer Wendell Willkie. Indeed, in real life, Dewey called Lindbergh's speech an inexcusable abuse of the right of freedom of speech, while Willkie said it was, quote, the most un-American talk made in my time by any person of national reputation. As it seems to happen often in America these days, the establishment's condemnation of such rhetoric falls on deaf ears. In addition to exploiting miscalculation by the political class, Trump and Ross Lindbergh share other similarities. In the book, Lindbergh flies around the country in the spirit of St. Louis. More advanced airplanes were, of course, at his disposal, but Lindbergh meant to evoke nostalgia. He's greeted in Los Angeles by a crowd numbering in the tens of thousands, many of them aircraft manufacturing workers. He speaks in language that is, quote, unadorned and to the point. He is unpredictable even to the, quote, professionals who had been assigned by the Republican Party to steer the political novice through his first political campaign. Here is Roth presaging another fatal miscalculation. Democrats were quick to belittle his barnstorming in the spirit of St. Louis. At press conferences, Roosevelt no longer bothered to make a derisive quip when questioned by newsmen about the unorthodox Lindbergh campaign, but simply moved on to discuss Churchill's fear of an imminent German invasion. It was clear from the start of the president's campaign was to consist of remaining in the White House, where, in contrast to what Secretary Ickes labeled Lindbergh's carnival antics, he planned to address the hazards of the international situation with all of the authority at his command, working around the clock if necessary. Americans, in Roth's telling, are captivated by Lindbergh's campaign, following it daily through the entertainment medium of the day, which was radio, just as cable news networks today, again, are unable to not turn away, or they're unable to turn away from confirmation hearings and Trump rallies. Twice during the state-by-state tour, Roth writes, Lindbergh was lost in bad weather, and each time, several hours passed before radio contact with him was reestablished, and he was able to let the country know that all was well. And you can imagine everybody was waiting to hear. Trump is, in a similar way, very much the darling still of the media, and commands vast amounts of airtime without paying a dime for it. His unceasing barrage of terrifying policy pronouncements, lies, insults, praise for foreign dictators, are like a powerful monsoon in a parched desert. Unable to absorb it all, the political press acts merely as a conduit for an unceasing torrent of nonsense they cannot or will not put into perspective. Perhaps the most striking similarity between the reality of Trump and the fiction of Roth can be found in the character of Rabbi Lionel Bengelsdorf, a Southern-born radio sermonizer supportive of Lindbergh. I am here, the rabbi says, to crush all doubt of the unadulterated loyalty of American Jews to the United States of America. I offer my support to the candidacy of Colonel Lindbergh because the political objectives of my people are identical with his. America is our beloved homeland. America is our only homeland. Roth's father, the family in the book happens to be named Roth as well, listens to this on the radio and says, "What the hell did he do that for? Does he think that one single Jew is now going to go out and vote for this anti-Semite because of that stupid lying speech? Has he completely lost his mind? What does this man think he's doing?" Roth's fictional cousin Alvin replies, "He's koshering Lindbergh. He's up there talking to the Goyim. He's given the Goyim all over the country his personal rabbi's permission to vote for Lindy on election day." So too, we've witnessed now in 2 cycles, Trump's campaign attempts to appeal to Black and Hispanic voters, an outreach that was demonstrably more successful this time around, even though he is still somewhat of the guy who speaks of minorities like someone watching a ball game from a bar stool. All of the narrative about Lindbergh takes place, that I've mentioned, in the first 50 pages of the book, The Plot Against America. Once elected, Lindbergh's impact isn't so much a matter of executive action, as insidious as some of those can be. It lies instead in his creation of new boundaries for acceptable speech and behavior. Unlike the Third Reich, Lindbergh doesn't enact an American version of the Nuremberg laws or instigate violence, though the anti-Semitic riots in the novel increase after he mysteriously disappears. Rather, he clearly signals to the German-American Bund and to other anti-Semitic groups that they no longer need to hide their prejudices. The Roth family feel this stigma immediately after Lindbergh's election on a sightseeing trip to Washington, D.C., where they are refused service at their hotel and verbally accosted by fellow travelers. When Herman Roth is called a loudmouth Jew on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, he immediately blames Lindbergh. "You think you'd hear that if Roosevelt were still president? People wouldn't dare, they wouldn't dream in Roosevelt's day. But now that our great ally is Adolf Hitler, now that the best friend of the president is Adolf Hitler, why now they think they can get away with anything." If you personally have not experienced that level of hateful rhetoric, and I hope you haven't, consider this. At Trump's first inauguration 8 years ago, a group of school-aged children from Milwaukee were in Washington for the inauguration. When an administrator checked in with them by phone with the teachers on the trip to see how things were going, she was told, "We're going to have to do a lot of debriefing when we get back." Evidently, the kids were staying in a hotel filled with supporters who were making terribly racist statements everywhere in the hotel. Well, what's next after Monday? Why is it that some of the groups our next president clearly holds in low esteem came out in droves to vote for him? Without Congress or a nonpartisan executive branch to hold him back, what new national nightmare might we come to see? Well, this is where I'm going to go with the book's ending. Bit of a silver lining. In The Plot Against America, everything turns out all right. In the novel, after Kristallnacht, the night of smashing glass in Jewish stores and synagogues, people begin a process of sobering up. Not long thereafter, Japan attacks Pearl Harbor, and in that way, the counter-history reconnects with the real events. And there you have it, with perfect timing, that we are beginning the book of Exodus, the book of our liberation, and what can feel like the start of a long, dark night. Is there a Moses among us, preparing to speak truth to power and lead us to the promised land? Will God chime in with edifying plagues and miracles? Well, stay tuned. This weekend, amid the chill of a real winter, I am going back to reread the plot of Against America. Like some, I often prefer to read the book rather than seeing the movie. And in this case, I'd much rather read the book than watch the reality TV show version. Shabbat Shalom. We are going to move towards the conclusion of our service, first with the Aleinu, which you can find on page 586 of the Siddur. And I would ask you please to rise and join us in facing the ark.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
You can find the Kaddish Yatom, the Mourner's Kaddish, on page 598 of the Siddur. We think especially this Shabbat, the first of the following, who are Israeli soldiers who have died this week. Eliav Astyokar, Alexander Fodorenko, Daniela de Yaakov, Yahav Ma'ayan, Yair Yaakov Shushan, Yoav Pfeffer, Aviel Weissman, Yahav Hadar, and Guy Carmiel. We think as well of Larry Rector, Paul's father, who died several weeks ago. The following members of our congregation who are saying Kaddish during this first year of a loved one's death: Rhoda Silver, Robert Israel, James Yanni, Leo Weinschel, Myrna Grossman, Herb Bratt, Bill Nikud, Dick Kahn, Stan Jolton, Robin Glickstein, Bob Lieb, Allie Kravitz, Marcia Fenson, Nancy Osterman, David Hestad, Gary Sobel, Chip Alberts, Hank Borkovitz, Jonathan Frank, and Stan Aronoff. And the following whose yahrzeit or yearly anniversary of death occurs this week: Betsy Bell, Mildred Belzer, Morty Blutstein, Rivka Charney, Alice Copeland, Leon Dolnick, Nancy Frank, James Golding, Ruth Gordon, Harold Heiken, Elaine Holman, Rosemary Keeley, Bruce Klein, Dorothy Lazarson, Max Luck, Jeffrey Kimball Marcus, Helen Padway, Jean Polachek, Albert Rezepper, Roger Resick, Ralph Sherman, Claire Stein, and Jay Werber. If there's anyone who you know, a friend or a loved one who has recently died, or whose yahrzeit falls this week and whose name I didn't mention, I would ask you please to mention those names aloud at this time. Bob Euchre. Has he been buried yet? Okay. Most of the Jewish traditions may not apply, but I get it. No, I was really moved to hear that he had gone on to his great baseball show in the sky. Anyone else, though? Let's join together in Kaddish.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach chiroteh v'yamlich malchuteh, B'chayechon v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imeru. Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lamei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal Shemei d'kudusha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
May the source of peace, who makes peace in the highest heavens, enable us to learn how to make peace here on earth. And may God share with those in mourning a measure of comfort and consolation. And together we say,
Amen.
Please be seated, except for you, Alan.
Shabbat Shalom. Tonight's announcements. Tonight's Oneg is sponsored by Lawrence and Ann Golding in memory of James Golding, and Nick and Janet Padway in memory of Helen Padway. We are grateful for the contributions made this week to our Sinai community in memory of Max Luck, Jack Silver, Nancy Frank, Jeffrey Kimball Marcus, Helen Padway, Elaine Holman, Joe and Shirley Aaron, and in honor of Marlene Lalawasser. Please join us for the following upcoming programs. Join the Social Justice Committee at their monthly meeting Monday, January 20th, 5:15 p.m. at Sinai and on Zoom as needed. Join the Rockin' Shabbat Band for an upbeat Shabbat service on Friday, January 24th, 6 p.m. at Sinai with live stream available. Do not miss that. Go all in at the Sinai Brotherhood's third annual Sinai in Spades Hold'em Poker Tournament, Saturday, January 25th at Sinai. Instructional session at 6:30 p.m. Play starts at 7, ending when we have a final table champion. You can register on Shul Cloud. Ashienu, a men's spirituality group gathering, Sunday, February 2nd, 8:30 a.m. at Sinai. Contact Mitch Colton for more information. Enjoy a cup of coffee with the clergy and sages on Friday, February 7th at 11 a.m. at St. John's on the Lake. See the e-news for location information. Sample an array of Middle Eastern cuisine at a communal Shabbat dinner on Friday, February 7th. Service at 6 p.m. and dinner at 7:15 p.m. at Sinai. Register via the e-news. And for more information on programming or upcoming events, please refer to the Tuesday and Friday Sinai e-news for registration information, live stream, and Zoom links. Shabbat Shalom.
And as we bring our service to a close, I would ask you to please rise and join me on page 123 for our Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho b'yahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit, ki hu yom techila l'mikra'ei kodesh, zecher l'yitziat Mitzrayim, ki banu v'acharta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, ve'shabbat kodshecha, באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת לחיים. And please join me for the Hamotzi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'tei avon.
Shabbat shalom, everyone, and come join us inside.